the kids. So you had set it ahead and then it jumped another hour ahead.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Because it was after the time change.
Right.
Somebody must have came in and thought, oh, I'm gonna move this ahead an hour.
They must not know how to tell time
Yeah.
and analyze that.
All right, we ready? All right, it is 6:02. We will go ahead and resume. All right, and we are on item 7, financial reserve discussion and investment options. Dr. Bush?
Thank you, Mrs. Ross, Mostly members of the Board of Education. I am sorry for being a little late to this meeting. I was double booked due to a meeting that had been rescheduled twice during a snow day, so I didn't want to reschedule again. Sorry for arriving late. This evening, we're gonna revisit a topic that the board had asked us to do some investigation into at our last workshop. And tonight is designed to present the board with some information about investment options for Michigan Public School Districts. And in our board meeting in our workshop in January, the question was asked and we, Mrs. Sosowski and I revisited the topic of designating a portion of our fund balance for future staffing needs and staff compensation. And the question was asked, what are our investment options to perhaps make this money grow a little bit for us? And again, we're kind of building towards, and we'll work through the finance committee, building towards the possibility of looking at a fund balance designation for future staff compensation and future staffing needs, setting that aside a little bit later this school year as part of our end of the year budget. And so what I've got tonight to share with the board is what we're legally allowed to invest district funds in, what we've current, and the second part will be an overview of what our current practice is, and then what our future options or other options could be. Again, in a workshop format, not looking for a decision tonight, but this is just designed to simply inform board members on what our options are out there. So our school district, like every school district in the state of Michigan, is governed by a series of laws that deal with public investment. It's the same as a city, same as a township, a downtown development authority. Because we're a taxpayer-funded organization, there's certain limitations on what we can invest our money into. Do I have the ability to click, or Heidi, could you hit that policy? Thank you. So I wanted to start by sharing with the board Policy 6144. And this policy mirrors Michigan state law regarding the investment of public funds. And essentially, what we are able to do is invest in some very limited sorts of things. It's a little chopped up the way it translated over from our board doc information. But essentially, bonds, bills, or notes in the United States. The second thing is certificates of deposit, which we'll talk about in a second. It has to be issued by a federally chartered bank. Commercial paper rated Prime 1 or Prime 2. Securities issued by the United States government. United States federal agency repurchase agreements. And bankers acceptance notes from a bank that is insured by the FDIC. And then mutual funds combined of all of those things that I just mentioned. So we're pretty limited in terms of what we can invest taxpayer dollars in. Our board policy mirrors state law, and that's pretty consistent across the United States. So currently, we maintain investments in a mutual fund organization called MyLAF, and that stands for the Michigan Liquid Asset Fund. And that is a government investment pool. And what many school districts and municipalities do is invest in a government pool. So you're not out there on your own, you're part of a larger group of school districts, of townships, of cities, of municipalities. And so MyLAF is a government pool utilized by K-12 school districts, universities, and community colleges, and is compliant with all the state and federal regulations I just mentioned. So what I want to do next is talk a little bit about how we've used MyLAF. So if we could click on the MyLAF website, it's actually pretty straightforward. First of all, when you log in, actually if you wouldn't mind hitting the refresh button, Mrs. Sisowski. I want that notice to pop up again,
Okay.
cause
Let me get out.
that's important. So yeah, click on it again, so, the first thing well, it's not doing it. But, thank you, Stephanie just pointed out, what it says is, please read this important announcement from our investment manager. There are no holdings or exposures to Silicon Valley Bank or its parent company, as well as Signature Bank New York within the program. So, that's the first thing you see when you log in. So if you scroll down a little bit, MyLaugh essentially has two different classes, or two different investment vehicles. One is called the cash management class, and we have some money in there, and I'll talk about that in a second. And that allows for some liquidity. There's a little bit lower interest rate, but at the same time, that money's accessible within the same day. So for example, when we receive our state aid payment each month, we move that money into the cash management class. It sits there, it accrues interest, and then prior to our payrolls every other Friday, we move it into our payroll issuing bank. The second category is what's called the max class. Again, we're still under that MyLaugh government investment pool umbrella, but the max class is a more medium to longer term rate. It has a little bit higher, not much, a little bit higher interest rate, but it's not as liquid. So for example, we will eventually move, if we were to do a bond sale in the future, we would put some of that bond proceed money, RJ just mentioned how it comes in, we would put some into the cash management where it's needed right away, but then others that are going to be longer term draws will go into that max class and generate a little bit more interest. So one is very liquid, a little bit lower interest rate, and one is a little bit higher interest rate, but it comes with some restrictions on how frequently you can move that money. The third bullet point there is a separate governmental class option that we don't currently use, but that's different from the other two classifications within MyLaugh, because this government MIC class would allow us to invest at the same time with governmental entities that include counties and municipalities. Those first two I mentioned, school districts, K-12s, and higher ed only. And then Mrs. Sisowski, if you would just scroll down a little bit more, just to give you an idea, MyLaugh is a government investment pool. You'll hear me refer to that a couple different times. And it is governed by the Michigan Association of School Boards, the Michigan School Michigan School Business Officials, and the Michigan Association of School Administrators. There are agents and trustees that are elected to this board to govern it and to run it. So it's kind of similar to our workman's comp pool, which is run by SETSE. It's run for school districts, by school districts. The oversight comes from superintendents and administrators. It is ran, the trust itself is ran, and if you could click on Mrs. Sisowski, that various professional organizations.
Yep.
Down, up, sorry.
Right here.
Yep, and of course it's not gonna click. Okay, scroll down a little bit more, I'm sorry. Alright, scroll up. A little bit more. A little bit more. Okay, we should have a menu someplace.
Top left corner. This one?
No,
On their side.
Asset one?
try it. Oh, top left, there it is. Okay, if you go to service providers, so as I said, the board of trustees, which is elected by the MyLaugh members, I get that, kind of quote unquote vote on who's doing it. But then they contract with the following individuals. So PFM, who's RJ's firm you just heard with, they do the investment advising. Fifth Third Bank is the banking pass-through that actually manages the dispersals. It's audited by Ernst & Young, and Troon Law Firm, which is a big law firm in the state of Michigan, does all of their legal work. So I share that with you, that it's trustees or school business officials and superintendents, but it hires a professional set of managers to handle all of it. So I wanted to explain kind of the background and how that works. Now we'll kind of jump to the big question, which is what kind of rates do we get? So in the cash management class, which again is designed to be flexible and liquid, there's a 4.5% yield or 4.5% interest rate that we make on it. In the MyLaugh Max class, which is that medium to long-term money you don't need access to immediately, again, a little bit higher but not much at 4.67. So if you could go back to that MyLaugh homepage real quick and then up to the menu. It's really neat because you can click on the current rate, which about is halfway down there, and it gives it to you in nice plain English. So those are the rates from Friday. And then it has a current, if you scroll down a little bit, a 7-day yield, so it can show you, what typically is bearing out. So to answer the big question, right now, if you scroll up a little bit, we are in, depending on the investment product, in about that 4.5 to 4.7 interest rate. That's what the market is bearing out in our holdings that we have currently. If you could jump back to the doc page. So I'll give you an idea of what this looks like for us. I included our statement from the end of February. We have to download it and then rotate it. Maybe if you could collapse the side panel. What happens if you click the 3 bars or it says MyLaugh statement, 228, other side? Perfect. So maybe make it just a touch bigger.
You're asking.
Thank you. That's for my benefit because I'm trying to focus on my eyeballs here. So this is what our typical statement looks like. You can see what the current yield was, the average for the month end, which is that number that appeared previously, 4.5 and 4.67. And you can see that all of our funds there are in the local government investment pool. We don't do anything outside of that. And if you scroll to the next page, you can see how we've got it split up. We tend to like a little bit more liquidity because with our state aid. So we have about, again, round numbers, about 75% in that cash management class and about 25% of our investments in that MyLaugh Plus class. So that is the vehicle that we have used that served us well. Went out and did some research on other options that were available. Again, kind of keeping in mind we're in that 4.5 to 4.8% interest rate. There's not a lot out there because the laws that govern public investments in the local government investment pools are pretty restrictive. So you don't see a lot of investors getting into this market because frankly it's so conservative. With that said, there's another major public investment pool called Michigan Class. And this is a pool that is similar, it's a competitor to MyLaugh, and it's almost identical in terms of yields. So this stands for Michigan Cooperative Liquid Asset Securities. And essentially this is a different version of MyLaugh. If MyLaugh was a Chevrolet sedan, a Michigan Class is a Ford sedan, or SUV, take your pick. But if you go to the yields, I think that's probably gonna be what we wanna take a look at. So you can see there, when you put MyLaugh and Michigan Class side by side, they've got today's numbers up. They're at a 4.8 on the daily yield. And they've got some weekend numbers over there, which is that. But if you go to the 17th, which is where we pulled our MyLaugh information from, a little bit higher. And, you know, the net asset value on the far right is essentially for every dollar you invest, that's what you're getting back. So if we can go back to that homepage, the Michigan class homepage. And could you scroll down just a touch? It's very similar. They have two different funds. Similar, this shows their board of trustees again. The big difference with this is that it has municipal. The Michigan class has municipal. You see Wausau Public Schools. These are their trustees. The difference between Michigan class and MyLab is Michigan class opens up to municipalities. And they have two different funds, if you will. One is called Michigan Class and one is called Michigan Class Edge. And that essentially mimics what MyLab's two different options were. One is more liquid, a little bit lower interest rate. One is not as liquid, a little bit higher interest rate, more short-term, long-term. We have never invested with this as we look to the future and think about designating a portion of this fund balance. This could be an option for us as well. It's trending at or about, maybe a touch higher today, the same yield as what MyLab is, but it's essentially a competitor. And, you know, there's also, you know, and we would get into this as we look at designating a portion. You could have money in both places.
Doug, can I ask you a question?
There's no restriction on that. Yep.
So, is the reason why they're getting higher returns, is it because municipalities are included and there's a larger group of funds?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Because they are spread over townships, cities, drain commissions, downtown development. I think that expands their market a little bit, and that's probably, again, the more diversity you have, still under all the same restrictions, but that's giving a little bit more of a diverse background to their people. And then the last piece, if you click on that Gov MIC that I just wanted to share, is MyLab also has a product, and you see this you've got the same notice that MyLab has. This is a section of MyLab, a portion of MyLab, where they got into the business. It's called the GovMIC, stands for Governments of Michigan Investing Cooperatively. And this is a MyLab vehicle that opens it up to municipalities. So this is, we just looked at Michigan Class, which includes municipalities. This is a third component within MyLab that gets a little bit higher rate because they're getting into the business of investing along with cities, towns, governments, drain commissions, bridges, ordinance, those types of things. So this would be another option for us as well. And then if we jump back to the Google Doc, thank you. Another option for us is to look at certificates of deposit. And so this gets out of the investment pools, and this is a certificate of deposit, not unlike what you may have in a personal account, but looking at what is out there and what's available as of, and I picked late in the day on Friday just to get the most recent number, the way that things bounce around a little bit. We would fall into, with the amount of money we would potentially invest into what's called the jumbo range. And those CDs on a year investment are annualizing out at about 4.7%. So this one happened to be through one of our local banks that, you know, if we were looking at the end of the year doing a fund balance designation resolution, we certainly could shop that around and see if we can get a little bit better. But the CD is an investment vehicle we have used in this district pretty frequently for our sinking fund. We actually, about 12 years ago, opened up a CD, started putting a couple $100,000 a year into a CD in our sinking fund, would keep renewing it, and that's essentially what paid for the football field conversion this summer. Is we invested that, got some return. So in the big picture, for what's allowable in Michigan public school districts, it's gonna be at that looking at it today as a moment in time, it's gonna be at that 4.5 to 4.8, probably 4.6 to 4.7% range. The only other alternative would be if we didn't wanna go with the government investment pool. I shared two of those with you tonight, one of which we've used, and we didn't wanna go with a CD. The only other option would be to sit down with the money manager at one of the local banks with our board policies and say, this is what we can invest in, and almost set it up separate and individualized, as a kind of a Fenton only account and manage it that way. And that's certainly something we can continue to research. However, there's an element of risk there that's pretty strong, because although you've got these restrictions on what you can invest in, you're the only one. And in schools, when you spread that risk over quite a few different pool members, it helps to eliminate some of those risks. So, we are kind of confirmed that we're right where we usually, right what the market's playing out. If there was a situation where we did this research and came back and we were seeing, 6% or 7%, I would be here tonight talking about a little bit more urgency to move this pretty quickly. I think though, our track of looking and working with the finance committee by the end of this fiscal year to designate that and then invest it into one of the more long-term accounts is gonna bear fruit for us going forward, if that's the direction the board would like to go with. Yep.
I don't know if this is a question you can answer just offhand, but, for the CDs versus the investment pools, historically and from your experience, does one ebb and flow more, or are they both pretty consistent
They're both
with each other?
pretty consistent because they're so conservatively invested and limited by our accounts.
So over the course of a year, they're probably gonna perform about the same?
That's correct,
Okay.
yep. We've got some pretty good track record with, the sinking fund CD that we did that funded the football stadium. I went back and looked at that, and it ends up on an annual basis kind of leveling out with where our MyLaugh investments were. I think to that point, I think one of the byproducts that may come out from this towards the end of the year, if we do deal with some fund balance designation and invest these funds, it may be a good idea to open up an account with Michigan Class just to get into another investment pool. It would probably be a good idea to look at some of these additional jumbo CDs and see, it's not necessarily a formal bid, but, shop the local banks and see what we can get and kind of put that fund balance designation piece into some different, still very safe, but different places, just to have some points of comparison and revisit it a year from now.
Now, I have a question. So right now, it doesn't look like you keep very much money in MyLaugh.
No, that's correct.
So, you just keep it in a checking account?
We have an account, at the state bank.
And how much do you normally, on a monthly average, is in that checking account?
This year it's between 9 and 10.
So why, I just don't understand why you're not putting it in MyLaugh right now as it is. Because you could put $5,000 in MyLaugh all along and been making interest. It's, all you do, it's just a click of a button to move the money.
Yep.
I guess I don't understand why we're not utilizing this to begin with.
We're gonna be utilizing it more. We haven't moved, we're starting to move more of it in.
Okay.
And we normally don't have that much. We're normally more heavy into MyLaugh. With some of the ESSER funds that have come in the last year, we've kind of left that in the bank, so it's a little bit more accessible. And because we didn't know if we were gonna end up designating it or not. So that's, as we did this review, we're gonna start moving more in sooner. Belinda and I talked about that yesterday. We just wanted to have it on hand, particularly with the pandemic and those sorts of things, even though you're absolutely right, it is easy to move in and move out. And be a little bit more liquid.
Is there any,
No, cause I was gonna say, with my experience with the class, Matt's class, There's no restrictions.
Same day.
Same day. I move it the same day.
Yep.
And yes, you're getting a little bit more, but I mean, without us even talking about a $2 million, set aside or anything like that, I think you need, I mean, it's just makes sense to move money now. It's,
Yep.
especially if it's the same day. I move money the day before payroll.
Yeah.
It
that's
just
what we
makes
use.
sense to keep that money, especially when right now it's making 4.5%, so.
Is
Absolutely.
Okay.
Michigan class or my lab?
My left.
My
My
lab.
lab.
Pam, you said something about 5,000, so is there an amount that you're able to move
I think
every
you
so
maybe
often?
meant 5 million,
Not 5 million.
yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
say take 5 million from our checking account, state bank,
Yeah.
and move it immediately because of the fact
Yeah,
that
it's a
we're
$250,000
making no,
a year.
we're not making a dime in the,
Just
in
Yeah,
the checking
normally
account.
we were, you're right, the interest rate on the checking account is next to
It is
nothing.
nothing.
Normally, we were more MyLab heavy with the extra, funds coming in, ESSER and that sort of stuff, we've kind of kept it there. Again, it's only been like that for, probably 6 months a year, so we're gonna move it over pretty quickly,
Before, there really, I mean, up until about 6 months ago, my life really wasn't making
Yeah,
a whole lot
it
of
was
money.
the
There was
same.
there was an
Yeah.
18-month span where
Yeah.
it didn't matter where you really had the
Yeah,
money because you weren't
absolutely.
making it, but
Yeah.
now,
Now
my
it's-
life is
now it's
really,
the time.
really
Yeah.
has
And
really
that's why we
pumped up.
didn't, that's a great point, and that's why we didn't move it sooner, is, you look and it's about the same, you leave it here locally, so, yeah, we do plan on moving that over.
Is there any board restrictions or action that is required to move it in excess of certain?
Nope.
Okay, all right.
So we can move that right away, now that it's getting a little bit, or a lot more competitive interest rate, great point.
And I know you said that you can get it right away, but is there any limit on how many transactions you can make in a certain period of time?
Not on the cash account, MyLab, because we've used it in the past, as Pam indicated. There's not real restrictions, you can move that multiple times a day if you
And
want.
you don't have to leave it in 3 minutes or a short
No.
window?
Nope, it's really flexible.
And there is, well,
I mean, we would.
there
but
is a
just-
fee
Yeah.
to do direct, like that same day.
Yeah.
You can do three a month. But if you do an ACH, which is like
Bank to bank.
the next day or
You get
a
it.
48 hours, so if you know you're due it on Monday, you know you have payroll on Friday, there's no charge, you can do as many as you want.
So we'll be moving back into MyLab, because it's a lot more competitive.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Hadn't been recently, but again, I think when you're looking at those governmental pools, from the big picture, the investment, people are looking to invest money. The fact that the governmental pools, particularly school districts, are backed by property taxes, that's a safe investment, and so that's why those rates have gotten a little bit higher.
Yeah, I think anything that we can capitalize on while no one's good, we should take advantage of
Yep.
it like we talked about.
Absolutely. Yeah, last 18 months, it really hasn't done much, but they're starting to come up now.
Is there any food for thought in diversifying?
You're talking about 20 basis points basically between the high end and the low end, so it's, and there's restrictions on the higher end, so,
Yeah.
the more you keep it liquid and flexible, but yet keep it in the safe.
Yeah, on the higher end, for example, that's the medium term, that's where putting the sale of money from the property, those types of things,
Yeah.
potential bond proceeds, but, as Pam indicated, the stuff that you transfer with payroll and those sorts of things, we keep it in one that's a little bit more flexible.
I would hate
I
to
think
tie
that'd
our
be
money
pretty-
up for 14 months in a CD just to
Yeah.
Yeah,
get,
no.
make a little
Well,
percent
it's
higher.
so close, exactly.
And then not be able to get to that, if we
Yep.
needed to. And just from my own personal experience, my life is, between my life and Michigan class, I mean, if we're just talking a minute amount of a change, I just know my life is such a great company to work for. And, you can call them up if you have any problems. It's just,
Super responsive.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's, your relationship with the bank that you're
Well,
working with.
he's got that relationship with RJ.
Yeah,
who's-
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
So he's got a vested interest in it already,
Yeah.
yeah, so I agree.
Mhm.
I would like to know your opinion on whether we should, I agree with not tying up for 14 months, but on whether we should have some in each, my class and.
I don't, I would like to do a little bit more research. With as close as they are right now, I don't see a huge incentive for us to put some money into my class. But I think it's something that we need to monitor very closely. And when we start to get 0.5%, a full percent, that's when you might start paying a little bit more attention. But right now, you know, the nice thing about those government pools is they're safe, they're super conservative because they're governed by all the laws that we're under. And the drawback to that is there's not that many products that are out there. But I think this is something to keep an eye on. And as Pam indicated, my lab can kind of be non-competitive for a while, and then they get a little bit more competitive. So at this point, I don't see a need to, but it'd be something we should monitor.
Thank you.
Good question.
It's always good to move grades around.
Yeah.
different baskets.
And I think, you know, if we're talking at the end of this year, and we're gonna designate a portion of that, you know, I could see, in your point about flexibility with the CD, is very important, because right now, we're in a very good position, but when, you know, you talk about in the budget, you know, as you look at the tea leaves coming up in the future, you know, per pupil foundation allowance, all those sorts of things look good. But 2 or 3 years down the road, you would hate to be in a situation where you get a mid-year proration on your state aid and it's gonna get cut. And as Pam said, your money's tied up in a CD, and it's like, do you pay an astronomical penalty? So I would also see coming back this spring and saying, you know, if we are gonna designate, maybe the number's 2 million, maybe 100 or 200,000 goes into a CD, but the lion's share goes into something more liquid. So, brief overview, kind of continuing the conversation from January, new information, hopefully it was useful and helpful, and we'll revisit again a little bit more at the end of the fiscal year.
I think it was very helpful, thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, moving on to number 8, board governance, best practices, and operating manual protocols. So, you all received this in the Friday update. This is a document that, NASB, we had a workshop prior to COVID where they recommended all school districts taking into consideration your bylaws as a board, then having another document that just kind of outlines best practices and operating procedures and protocols. This was a document that was started with the policy subcommittee, but has not been completed. So we would like to kind of resurrect that, bring that back, so that we could get this finalized. We talked about it briefly in our policy subcommittee that we wanted to bring it before everybody at the whole workshop, just have some dialogue about it, maybe some things you noticed, suggestions, and then as a subcommittee over the next few months, we would take a look at it and clean it up and really finalize it so that we could bring it back before the whole board and put it to action.
So I've been lucky enough to be on this policy committee, this operating procedures from, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. And then it kind of went by the wayside, and then people change positions, new members come on, and it just kind of fell off our plate. The nice thing about this is that it does have a repeat of a lot of our policies in here, but it's just a very easy, convenient place to kind of go and look if you wanted to, you know, let's just say something about communication with the community, or, you know, just what is the policy and the procedures when we do have public comments. If you didn't know what the policy, read it all intact. You might have this here just to kind of reference and, you know, like, oh, what am I supposed to, you know, it's just kind of a reference guide that's condensed and it really does have some good information in it. It's just, we need to finish it and kind of see if there's areas that we've missed, or if there are some areas that maybe we need to, from 5 years ago, maybe situations have changed or whatever it may be. But that's what this kind of, came from, is just a nice thing, because when you are a new board member, we don't give you a binder like this with all the board policies and just say, hey, here you go, start reading. This at least could be given to you right off the get-go, a small read, but yet help out with maybe some of the more important things, that we need to know, as opposed to all the detailed policies and stuff about like investments. Who was gonna go read investment policy? I'm sorry, Doug, but it's just something that, a reference guide that to the people who are on the committee, or important things that more of an everyday kind of thing that we as a board would kind of need or use or wanna read about. So that's kind of where this whole, document had started. And like I said, years ago, right, Dana, probably about what, 12 years ago? This was a Lynn Hopper thing that just went on and on and on.
Obviously, a lot of work went into it,
It
and it's
did.
really good work, and then the other thing is just got put to the forefront, and,
Yeah.
yeah, the biggest thing is really getting this back out in front of us and making sure we've got it at our fingertips when we need it, and know it's easy instead of, pulling out all those policies,
Right.
really digging in. But yeah, it'll be a very useful tool.
I agree, I think this is really useful, and I just, got this Thursday, obviously, this is my second workshop, this month will be my 4th board meeting, so I'm definitely not an expert on what has happened historically, but I started going through and flagging things that, there's a couple things that were like changes to law that need to be updated, there's a couple things I think might slightly contradict each other, there's some things that we're not doing anymore, like I noticed the regular board meeting agenda, like we combined public comment at one point, so I think it just needs a refresh, but I'd just like to talk about how do we make that happen most efficiently? Is that something that we're gonna do right now, or is it something we're gonna do in policy committee? Because I think we kinda need to go through it, not line by line, but like I flagged quite a few discussion items that I had, so I don't know how I wanna do that. And the other thing that I would say is, even though, I am an attorney, I'm not the board's attorney, I think that before we implement this, we should get advice of counsel to make sure that there's not something that, just my general knowledge missed, because there are certain things in here that I think may need to be addressed with our council, just to get some guidance on how we would actually implement it if there was ever, something that we had questions on.
Yeah, and I think in that same line, going back and looking at the policies that have been updated since this was started, and making sure those are reflected in here as well. So there is a lot of work to put the meat in this, but.
This is a really great
but it's-
foundation to start with.
Yes.
I'm not knocking it at all, I think it's great, but if
Yeah.
it's sat for that many years,
Yep.
and law changes.
Yeah.
And I think
Absolutely.
that maybe, if the board wants to go through some things tonight, that's fine. If not, maybe whatever questions you have or that, email, send them to Emily, and then I think maybe our next policy committee, meeting that we have, that this is gonna be the topic for the next couple meetings, and we'll get this, we'll work on it, and then bring it to the board in a couple months again, maybe, and just say, okay, here's our final draft, we took your input, if you gave us any, we updated what needed to be updated, changed, if policies are, referred in here and they're out of date. So I think that the policy committee maybe could go line by line by line, and which is what we did years ago, but again,
But I think
Refresh
if
my
we-
memory, who's the chair of the policy committee?
I am.
You are, okay.
Mhm.
So would you want everything directed to you in that respect? Because I printed it off, I've started making some notes on it, but I haven't gotten all the way through the whole.
That's fine, yeah, okay, then go
Okay.
ahead and send it to me, yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
I'll just try to keep it as clear and basic
That's fine.
as
And
possible.
even if you want to make it on here and scan it to me,
Oh, there you go, okay. yeah, that might work as
that's
well.
fine too,
Okay.
and all I'm gonna do is just bring it to
Right.
you know, bring it to the committee and say, had some board members that, you know, this was one, yes.
Yeah.
We talked about at the policy subcommittee meeting, just talking about kind of, we had a policy update from Neola, so that'll be coming in the April board meeting, as a first reading, but we also talked about meeting more regularly in the next kind of few months, because this is a project that I think we'd like to take on and have, complete. I can't tell you, Stephanie and I spent several times looking at, okay, so what do we pull for new board members? Do we pull this policy? Do we pull that policy? What do we make sure that they have a good understanding of? Having this, right, with your Open Meetings Act, would have been awesome to just give to everybody and say, hey, this is a great place to
It
start.
would be a good orientation tool.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I wonder though, if there's a lot of changes already that you know need to occur, if maybe that should happen first, then bring it to us. Cause I kinda feel like we may end up sending you a bunch of stuff that you know you're gonna change anyway.
Just becomes redundant.
The
Yeah.
cart before the horse type of thing.
Yeah, so,
Makes sense.
Yeah, we can
cause you said there
absolutely,
were already gonna be policy changes and that
Yeah.
may be something, so that maybe we could look at it again after you've kind of cleaned up what you know needs to be cleaned up,
Yeah.
and then
Most
we
definitely.
can compare it with what we have and go from
yeah,
there.
that's a great, no, you're good. That's a great suggestion. I think the three of us can get a date on the calendar, so we can do kind of that first cleanup, send it back out to you guys, and then, from that point, if you guys wanna make notes and send it back to us, then we'll schedule another
Another
session.
Yeah, I think that's what I was gonna suggest too, because I mean, and there's just some, like, there's some unfinished thoughts in here. Like,
Yes.
this was very much a draft, like, there's headings without anything underneath it and stuff, so.
Yeah.
I think if the committee spends some time working on it, as long as the board seems to, I mean, I know we're not voting or anything today, but as long as it seems like this is something that we wanna pursue, the policy committee can come back with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think what I can do too, maybe in the meantime, and we'll check with Wayne from Neola. I know Neola offers some type of vetting process for things like this. So maybe I can shoot it to him and just say, hey, listen, how much is it gonna cost us? Cause of course it's gonna cost us
Sure.
something, but, you know, does Neola vet that? And they would check the policies for us to make sure that our current policies match what is in here. So I can look into that too, if that would be
Yeah.
helpful.
I wanna be closer to final before we
Yeah.
engage that though, especially so we don't have to pay twice.
You got it.
Yeah. I know, what I've been doing also, and as, when we do get a draft that comes out to you, maybe between now and then, what's been helpful, I've been spending some time just kind of looking at other districts and looking, what do they have in their protocols, cause a lot of districts have this document, so I was able to even find some things that, other districts have updated or include that aren't included here, so those would be some things to note as well. As
Which
really-
districts were you looking at?
The one I was spending the most time, cause theirs is kinda long, is Novi.
Heartland was
And
one that I
Heartland.
was with.
Yep.
I looked up, looked through. I've done the same exact thing.
I think it'll be a great tool, it's just, we need to take our time and, make sure that we have all areas, covered and touched on and, again, that's why it's taken us 12 years to get to this point, so.
Well, I think it'll be a very meaningful and helpful exercise also, because, as you said, you're the only existing person who has had any experience doing that, so we're lucky that we have someone with the thought that has gone into it, but it's a new document for a lot of us, so.
When we get it done, do we wanna bring Lynn in just to?
It's done.
No,
Yeah.
I- well, yeah. But it's also, going over it is also a great thing for us as a board,
Yeah.
to actually go through it. Cause one of my biggest, areas that I've always told the prior superintendent is that we never really had a lot of workshops on policy. And I think that is really important for us, because we unless we're out there reading them, and most of the time you don't read them until there's an issue. And I'm not saying we'll remember them, but stuff like that, but it would be nice to, you know, know, what, you know, and what is the policy on email? What is the policy, you know, on procedures on, should we go to superintendent, you know, just things that we have talked about in the past. And, this is just, would be a nice document to
I think the
clarify things.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I enjoy as a new superintendent is whenever we get into a situation where like, okay, what's the policy? There's not a lot of conversations that happen that's really kind of where we're headed to. Those are really good conversations. So I think we've kind of set that tone of, let's check policy first, right, and see where we're at. But having a document that points us in that direction all the time is a great thing. It's a great thing.
Anyone else have other thoughts? The other thing you'll notice, you know, it just kinda, this has an annual calendar. I know I have been, talking with Heidi. It says May here. I don't, we may try to do it for the July workshop or sometime in the fall. But where you see, board self-evaluations, that's something, Matt, do you remember, like, right after we were on the board, we got to walk through this exercise? And I feel like it was a very helpful exercise to just be self-reflective, but it also kind of walks you through what our role is as a board member, our relationship with each other, and then our relationship with the superintendent. So that's just a really great tool, that I found very valuable, so I hope that we can, do that as a whole board.
I have a call into MASB
Okay.
too to get dates.
Awesome. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out. Alright. Okay, anything else? Okay, any other questions? Alright. Board reports, requests, announcements. Yes.
I just wanted, I have two kind of short things. I wanted to thank, State Road. I got to read there for March's Reading Month, and I'm gonna be reading, in a classroom in Tomac this week too, so I'm really enjoying the March's Reading Month. And I also wanted to, and we don't have to discuss it ad nauseum today, it just happened, but I had the opportunity to participate in the Flint Regional Science Fair this weekend as a judge, and I intend to bring this up at the full board meeting, too, just so the public is aware that this is an opportunity that exists. I don't believe Fenton sends any students to it, but it's what it is it's located in Flint, and they pull from other counties as well. There were some students from Saginaw, for example, but I did notice overall there aren't a ton of Genesee County schools in the Flint Regional Science Fair, so I thought it would be appropriate to mention that this may be an opportunity. I don't know if it's a good fit for our district or not, but I was very impressed by the quality of the science projects, and I think our Fenton Tigers may be interested in that. If we decide that, and this is more, I guess, of an administration teaching thing, but if we decide that you wanna do that, I can connect you with the people that organize it. They come in and they are willing to talk about it, what that looks like, what the application process is, and I guess, at least I've been told, they work with teachers on all levels to kind of work it into their already existing curriculum if they want to do that. So there are prizes associated with it, and I think a few scholarships, so I thought it would be a really good opportunity if our teachers decide that they wanna participate in that, to just mention it.
Is that young 5th through 12th grade?
So I believe so I didn't actually judge any elementary kids, but they have an elementary division, a junior division, and a senior division. And they actually didn't have a lot of elementary participants this year, so that's one area where they are looking for more. And I believe it starts in 3rd grade, but I would have to double check. And they do, it looks like a traditional science fair. They have their poster boards in a big room. Even if you're not a finalist, you get to present to at least one judge, so you have that public speaking opportunity. But then it does go through senior year. So I participated with one non-finalist senior. His project was way over my head science-wise. He was very, very intelligent, and I'm not a science person. And then I judged finalists for juniors, which I think is actually not, it's not senior, like high school juniors, I think junior is the middle school range. They were like the 7th through 9th grade.
We used to do it.
Oh, you did?
We did, we used to do it. We had, was called STEM night at the middle school, and every 7th grader had to do a STEM project or a science project. And then they got a chance to participate in the Flint Regional Science Fair. Of course, that was pre-COVID, and
Right.
a lot of things have fallen off since then, but it's an awesome opportunity. We had, I think, our 2 science teachers at the middle school used to kind of offer it out to all the kids, the 7th graders that would participate, cause that was kind of a part of their 7th grade course offering. They had to come up with a STEM project.
I remember having a
Oh,
melody.
yeah.
Do you remember that? And then we were all in the gym.
2, I had 2 at the same time, everything was always 2 at the same
Yeah,
time.
and we had it in the gym, and remember they had their storyboards.
Oh,
and, yeah,
yes,
yeah. So we
yes,
used to do that, and then a couple of kids, actually, I think one of the kids, created a hovercraft out of a leaf blower, and he took that to the Flint Regional Science Fair and did very well, but we haven't done it for a number of years, so it's great to be reminded about it.
So, yeah, and if we don't do it right away, if you're able to judge next year, it's a great opportunity.
I'm sure.
I remember in the elementaries, what was it, 4th or 5th grade, they did the one that went to, Kettering.
Yes.
Cause I remember my son went with his tuna fish can sweet syrup.
Yeah.
And created a, hey!
Yeah.
They got him to, they got him to go
Is that Young
to.
Inventors?
Yeah, I think that's what it
Yeah,
was.
I
My
think
kids
it
were
was
in Grand Blanc
Yeah.
in elementary, and
Yeah.
they did Young Inventors, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't get to participate in this section, but there is an engineering track too, so I don't know how that would fit in with like our robotics or anything
Yeah.
like
That's
that, but
awesome.
that's something to explore as well.
Thank you.
That's all I had, thanks for the time.
Any other reports, requests, announcements?
I have something I wanna say. So, I think when you're a teacher, like you never stop being a teacher. And it's really hard sometimes because when I think about how I treated my students in my classroom, I'm just very unhappy tonight. Because, I think the buzzwords, and when you're a teacher, there's always buzzwords. I mean, I think about like having to interview for the teaching jobs that I had. You would have to make sure you knew the buzzwords before you went to interview. And obviously, since January, a buzzword has been equality and inclusivity. But what I want to talk about is hatred and humanity. And this is really hard for me, so I apologize. So we've all heard the phrase, like, in a world where you can be anything, be kind, right? Why is it that people throw around that so easily, yet they can speak words that are nothing of the sort? I really wanna know when it became okay not to be kind or respectful of one another, even if you have a difference of opinion. So I've watched this whole saga unfold since January, and there's been no respect. There's been no kindness, and it's from a lot of people involved. Funny though, it all seems like it's on social media where people can hide behind a keyboard. And so as hard as it is for me tonight to even say these things to you, because I feel like we're supposed to be working together, and it doesn't feel like that to me at all. I believe that I'm not hiding behind a keyboard tonight. I'm being genuine, and I'm putting myself out there, probably to be a target of exactly what I'm going to tell you about. So we obviously are facing an issue here at Fenton Schools. There's 2 sides, and each side has the right to their opinion. But the board, the 7 of us, we've been charged with the duty to sort those things out. Yeah, as a board, have we discussed it? 2 months and 3 meetings have come and gone, and we have not discussed it. Oh, I understand that people with concerns have been answered by phone or email, but I've seen some of the responses, and I don't know that they've gotten the answers they felt they deserved. And what we as board members need to understand is the longer that we allow this to go on without a discussion, the more the hatred this building. I never allowed that in my classroom, and we're supposed to be representatives of a school district where we try to tell children how they should treat each other, and we're not even doing that here. The only way I can really feel like I can make the point to all of you tonight in a respectful and meaningful manner is by sharing something that I saw on social media. Really wanted to show it to you, but it's not appropriate. But there's a force, and it's coming from both sides, that is speaking about us, about the board, about concerned citizens, about Fenton schools, about Fenton community. We have a brand that I think we need to protect here in Fenton. It's one that is why I moved here. We know and understand being elected as a board member may make us a target of this hatred. And I think that's why I'm kind of really nervous tonight, because I'm putting myself out there and I'm gonna become that target. Mark my words. But what I saw about a community member that shared something at our last board meeting and how he was targeted made me very angry. Anyone that comes to this podium has a right to speak about anything that concerns them, no matter what side they're on. And we sitting here as a board have a responsibility to listen. And the fact that someone, I'm not even sure if this someone lives in our community, would take a video from our last meeting and do what they did, they're encouraging hatred, and it's despicable. And I want to know why we're allowing it. So I'm just gonna share with you some of the comments. So this video's out there on TikTok, and it's showing a person that came to our board meeting the last time. And when the video starts, the music that plays, actually, the lyrics are F you. Let me just read you a few of the comments. There's over 400 comments about a man that stood there and spoke to us. And it says, "Sir, with the utmost of disrespect, you appear to be the actual problem. Why the F is this controversial, damn white men? If he sees something sexual indoctrinating in that badge that is a product of his dirty mind, stop giving men a platform to spew their bigoted, hateful rhetoric. These people are nuts. At his age, he should really stretch before doing such extreme reaching. He definitely pulled something out his ass. How does he have the brain power to stand, breathe, and talk all at the same time? I don't know, but I think you can agree with me that that's hatred. So why are we allowing this? We are representatives of students and families in Fenton, and we need to put a stop to it. How do we do that? By respecting one another enough and listening to the concerns of all the Fenton families involved. And I want us each, and anyone who comes to that podium, to know that they have a right to their opinion. You put yourself out there like I am doing right now by voicing your opinion, but they don't deserve the hatred that's being spread about them for having an opinion about something happening in their community where they live and where they pay taxes, and after tonight, where you want them to pass a bond. Will everyone on this board agree on this subject? No, I don't think so. From watching over the last 3 months, probably not. But I'm hoping we can respectfully see the points of each side and discuss it for the sake of our community. I spoke in February, and at that time I had 4 main points: transparency, perception, exclusivity, and origination. That might be a good place to start. We need to peel back the onion and share our feelings about those thoughts so that the Fenton community knows that we have discussed it. And I encourage all of you sitting here tonight, whether it is with a differing opinion or not, to do this. We need to step it up and let people know that we do care about their concerns and comments, and we want to stop the behind-the-scenes hatred that has been spawned from the lack of our discussion. And it isn't about a side. It's about stopping something like that, because Fenton, somebody said tonight, we are Fenton, and it's all of us with differencing opinions. And I just don't understand why we're allowing that to happen. It's not right. And it's bothersome to me. And it's been like, not allowing me to sleep or anything, so I had to say those things tonight.
I think that's very, very valid. But it goes both ways too.
It does.
Yeah, and that's, I would
I think that's
venture
what
to
I
say,
said.
we all have our own opinions on how it is, but our job and our duty here is to set policy. That
Maybe we
is-
need to change policy.
And I don't disagree with that and the dialogue that goes along with that. I think the only thing that I do disagree with you on is that you said we don't work together at all. And that's bothersome to me in the limited amount of conversations that I've had with you, that I think that that's all been for naught. So, you know, what I do on the side, or how I carry myself, maybe I don't put it out there for everybody to see. But I don't think it's, with all due respect, I don't think it's your place to tell me that I'm not putting in the work to change things. If that was your intent, I don't know if it wasn't, then I apologize.
That was not my intent.
Okay.
We've not had a discussion about it at all, but it feels thick in this room tonight.
I mean, we haven't had a discussion about the incident that you're referring to there. We have had discussions about
Yeah, this is something.
the item.
This is something I just found out about and just.
No, and that's why, right, we have not had that discussions about that. We've had discussions about the issue at hand, which was the badge, is what it's stemming from, correct?
I guess. There's obviously something out there that's brewing.
Right.
And you know what? A student can find that. Do we really want our students
Sure,
to see this?
anybody can at this point, right?
Anybody can.
Yeah.
Renee, I appreciate your feelings, I do, and and like what Matt said, yes, all of us have our opinions. And unfortunately, us discussing it, unless somebody wants to make a motion to bring it to the board for, I'm not sure what, to not allow our staff, anybody to, wear the badge, we have legal, opinion on that. So if we go down that road, we need to be careful. It doesn't mean that we don't care, it doesn't mean, I listened to everything, you know, unfortunately I wasn't here for the last board meeting, but it's not that we don't care, we just have to be careful. I'm not sure what our next step is. I don't know.
I think we need to be careful on both sides.
Well, no, I agree. So if we go down this road, are we gonna set ourselves up for, you know, like some kind of legal implications? If we go down this road, are we still gonna have our community who's angry about it? I don't know, I'm not sure. The only way that we as a board can make a decision, one way or the other, is to put a motion on the table. And if somebody feels that strong about it, then it is their right at a board meeting to make a motion to ask for whatever they want. I don't know how all of us as a board fix this issue. Because, like I said, we can put a motion on the board and for one way or another, and I just, again, we do have a legal opinion on this, and, you were in that meeting, so. It doesn't mean I don't care, it doesn't mean that you know, my own personal opinion at this point on the board table, it doesn't really, doesn't matter, because I'm here for the school. I'm here for everybody.
I would just like to add, I appreciate your comments, because
it's hard to speak up and say how you feel, and it's hard to say in an open forum, it's hard to, you know, especially when you think that your opinion's not gonna be welcomed by all or none or whatever, but like Pam said, you know, we've had discussion, we've had legal counsel come in and give us their opinion on how we have to, maybe have to is not the right word, but, gave us guidance on how we can move forward or how we can operate regarding the issue that we have at hand. I believe Heidi has made a statement regarding that to the board and to the public, and I can't remember if that was January's meeting or if that was February's meeting. February's meeting. And many times, there's been, you know, issues brought before us and concerns of the public that have come in, and, you know, like Pam said, it might not be our personal opinion or how we feel about it, but in order to operate our school district, we may have to, you know, operate in a way that maybe my personal feelings don't line up. But in order to make the best decision for the district or be in compliance with this or the other, sometimes we have to do those things. Like I said, my personal opinion might not actually be the majority on this board, but if we, I guess, don't make the best decision that we can for our district, what does it open us up to?
I don't think I talked about an opinion tonight. I talked about horrible things that are being said.
I don't know how you police social media, because that stuff takes on a life of its own, and there's no way to get hands around that.
The only thing that I would say with that, and you guys have known in our last workshop and in several meetings, the best I can do is coach you guys, right? And then you have to kind of take what you, as a governing board, because you are a governing board that you govern, is just take that for what it's worth, is just me coaching and giving you some advice. I would say that best practices in any community that I've ever been a part of, typically governing boards don't take to social media. They don't go out and try to talk about board business. They don't go out and try to talk about municipal business on social media. My recommendation to you about social media, because you can see where it can go, and that's awful. That's just god awful for anybody to have to endure. Is just to, I've always said, social media for us as a school district is to promote the awesome things that we have going on. And there are a ton of awesome things going on. But there's a lot of things on social media that, as a superintendent, make my skin crawl. Not only for community members, but for our own students. I think you would be appalled at what happens to some of our students on social media as well. So that's my best coaching advice. My best coaching advice is try to stay away from social media as much as possible. Try to do a lot of our conversations that we have, letting people know that we are open to all viewpoints. That's what makes a good board, is that you have varying viewpoints and that people are valued because of them, and not to say something different on social media, different than what you say in an open forum. So that's what I was saying. That's my best coaching advice.
Sure would be nice to have another public comment time.
Other board updates, I would move to adjourn the meeting.
Any other? We have a motion to adjourn. Anyone?
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We will adjourn at 7:11.
Facing a decision on fear.
How do you get to have a conversation if they won't talk to you? I don't get it. And there she is ignoring everybody again. Around. Thank you.